from the Beat Hotel.
In about 1954 or 5, I met William Burroughs in Tangiers.
I'm just going to move that a little bit.
Where I used to go to change money when I lived in Spain. And then I decided to stay there for a while. And I got a message from a newspaper here, which doesn't exist anymore, a Sunday newspaper, which asked me to look into the case of a certain guy called Gysin, who had been living with the Oppenheimers and had stolen, or was alleged to have stolen, diamonds from them, and had disappeared to Tangiers. And I did look into the matter after Gysin idiotically tried to rob a Moroccan bank on a Saturday morning. He was immediately caught. Anyway, I looked into the whole thing and I sent back a report. But the kind of report that I did drew the attention of William Byrd, who was owner of the Tangiers Gazette then, and who actually was the first man to publish Ernest Hemingway's literature, and Gertrude Stein, and a couple of other people in a press called the Black Mountain Press. So he asked me to come on his newspaper, which I did as assistant editor, and finally I became editor. But on the paper I had a social column, and part of Tangiers society consisted of writers who would meet around a big round table at a place called Tony Dutch's restaurant. Tony Dutch was from I think he was I think he was associated with Dutch Schultz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was hiding out in Tangiers, from which you couldn't be extradited, like Gysin couldn't be extradited. Anyway, around the table there was Burroughs sitting, and I had a few words with him, and he invited me down to where he lived, which was called people called it Villa Delirio. And
he was an hombre invisibile, I guess.
Yeah, more or less. There were a few people who knew him, like Paul Bowles. Gysin then turned up his nose at everybody except high society. He ran a really high society restaurant called the 1001 Nights, which closed suddenly as a result of a hornet's nest in the corner at roof level falling on the head of a newspaper tycoon.
You wouldn't get very good reviews after that.
Well, they closed the restaurant immediately. The tycoon was taken to hospital with hornet's things. That's how I met them first, and I really wasn't involved much looking at their work. In fact, I never have been. When I met Burroughs again, which was in Paris, I'd been asked to look him up by Maurice Girodias, owner of Olympia Press, for which I was senior editor. And he wanted the naked lunch from Burroughs because there'd been a report in the New York Herald Tribune that 7 editors of a magazine called Big Table at the University of Chicago had been thrown out for publishing excerpts of Burroughs's. And so he sent me down. I went down to Burroughs, and Burroughs didn't recognize me at all. He said, "Come in, young fella. You're just on time. That's the way you should always be when you see your psychoanalyst." And he went on like this, with this delusion that he was a psychoanalyst. And he asked me, went through all the different kinds of psychoanalyses that I might want. I said, well, I'll have transactional. But you start off telling me your experiences, and then I'll tell you mine on Monday. And that pile of stuff up there, can I take it away? He said, sure, you'll see me all there. And I took it away, and fortunately it was a naked lunch. And when I came back with the galleys in 2 weeks' time, he changed immediately. He was a writer again. He'd forgotten about this psychoanalytic bout.
But he knew that you were playing a routine at that time, didn't he? Or,
no.
Or he just was in such a state that he casually allowed you to take the complete manuscript
he
away?
Didn't know I was playing a routine at all.
So he must have been pretty altered himself.
He was, yeah.
He must have come to his senses at some point and wondered what happened to his novel.
I doubt it.
Really?
Yeah.
You think that whole time he just was in...
Yeah, he was just completely out.
Was this from a combination of alcohol and cannabis and whatever
well,
else?
I don't know how much alcohol he took, but certainly cannabis, and then I don't know what it was, but it was he every now and again take a little bottle with a dropper in it, with a very dark liquid out of his cupboard and take some. I don't know what it was.
I wonder if it was morphine or something.
It could have been paregoric or something.
Yeah. So you didn't join him in indulging?
No, I mean it wasn't
Not
like
even
that
in
at all.
not even in Tangier.
Hmm?
Not even in Tangier.
Oh, in Tangier I had a bit of his majoon, which I quite liked, which he made himself, and I quite enjoyed that. Just after I had Houses of Joy published
At Olympia.
by Olympia, I bumped into Gysin, who spent 3 days talking me into moving into the Beat Hotel, obviously because he wanted to be published with Olympia Press and thought it would be easier if I was there. And really, like a fool, I moved out of a marvelous room I had in a hotel particulier on the top floor at the bottom of the Rue de Seine, with a wonderful view of the river and a wonderful view of a garden. And I moved into the most awful dump you can imagine. The walls were absolutely soggy. They looked as if they sweated and moved at the same time. And I stayed there for a couple of years. And I didn't see Burroughs at all until I should imagine 2 weeks later, when Girodias wanted the naked lunch. He kept to his room on another floor, and I never saw him at all. Gysin, I used to see quite a lot of. He didn't say much. He spent his time doing his calligrams very rapidly, one after another. And we didn't have much of an exchange about anything, except later when he got very paranoid, and I used to take him out walking to try to get him over his paranoia, which was worse in the streets, because everybody he saw was an agent of one kind or another after him for one reason or another. And to distract him from all this, I used to read or call out not only distract him, but to distract myself. I used to call out the street signs at random, like a cutter, and which I had done as long ago as 1944, going from the northern suburbs of Johannesburg to the ice rink in southern Johannesburg, and going with my uncle, and out of desperation calling out one street sign after another. I think that that this might have reinforced Gysin's discovery of cut-ups, which one knows the origin very well. He was cutting something with a knife, with one of these blade knives, and cut up a newspaper report, not with any intention, and then saw that the different pieces could fit together in a meaningful way, although they were randomly associated. Well, when it came to the cut-ups, he got very excited about them, and he started doing a lot. So I suggested to everybody, well, let's all do them. Let's have a big bowl, and then see what happens. So in a short space we had about 56 pages. I can show you the little book. You've probably seen minutes to go. And I typed the pages up, edited them, took them to Jean Fonchet, who's dead now, he died last March, French poet and publisher, that there was this thing. We turned it into a book, and Burroughs had called it Minutes to Go because it meant that all sort of business minutes and so on go away with this process. Fonchet agreed to publish it immediately, thought it was a wonderful idea, and he came up, and both Burroughs and Gysin were terribly paranoid about Jean Fonchet, whom they called Fonchet, and who also they didn't like because he was black and Mauritian, and they said he wasn't a black Mauritian poet at all or publisher, but obviously an Algerian from the Marais. And how could I get them involved in giving a manuscript to this man? Anyway, I said, no, we won't give it. And I finally got it to Fonchet when they were all stoned out and didn't know what was going on. And the cover still had to be done. But once Gysin saw the print and the galleys and how nice it looked, he agreed to do a cover. Brion, Gysin, I liked his paintings very much, his calligrams. But one thing I didn't like is the way he appropriated things. For instance, Ian Somerville invented a thing called the dream machine.
Mm-hmm.
Ian Somerville was from Oxford.
A friend of Burroughs.
Hmm?
A friend of Burroughs too, I believe.
Yeah, well, he started off with me,
Uh-huh.
and I chased him away because he said he wanted to set my poems mathematically. I said, I'm not interested. Go and talk to Burroughs about guys.
So Burroughs.
Anyway, he came up with the dream machine.
Uh-huh.
I think on some physiologist from Oxford who looked into the question of flicker,
Mm-hmm.
and well, he invented it and made it run in Gysin's room, and then Gysin immediately went off and patented it under his own name. And he was always appropriating things, one thing or another, and appropriating works of art and written or otherwise.
I believe some of Rimbaud got into some of those early cut-ups, for instance.
Yes, but that's okay, you
Uh-huh.
know. But I mean, he would say he claimed, for instance, that the book Minutes Ago was an entire poem with the title of Minutes Ago written by himself.
Oh.
Things like that. Well, it's okay, but it just messes up the records of things, you know, which are far more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Burroughs was frightened to challenge him on the matter, because Burroughs was always terrified of Gysin.
Now, why was that?
Probably physically, because Gysin was an enormous guy,
Mm-hmm.
and Burroughs is sort of slight and slender. I arrived with all the galley sheets, long ones, at Burroughs's, and he looked at them and said it's going to take 6 months to get this all in order. So I said, no, it's not. Just take the sheets as they are, like that. That's the order. Right at the back of the lot, that you could read the book in any direction you want. And he thought it was a great idea, and I took it away, and the book came out in a month like that. At the Villa de Liria in Tangiers, Burroughs had about 6 tables, and he moved from one table to another, working on one bit and then another bit, entirely unrelated. So there was no sequence to it anyway, and no sequence could have been worked out.